In the Arizona Territory, a woman's worth was measured in sons. Lara Croft had none. Deemed barren by her brutal husband, she was cast out, traded like livestock to the Chiricahua Apache to buy peace for his sprawling ranch. She was sent to the warrior Nalan as a spoil of a white man's war, a broken gift to a savage people. She expected cruelty or death. What she found was a man who looked at her supposed curse, her barrenness, and delivered a line that would rewrite her entire existence. I never wanted sons. The dust of the San Pedro Valley never truly settled. It was a fine red powder that coated everything, a constant reminder of the land's unforgiving nature. For Lara Croft, it was the grit she tasted in her mouth as she watched her husband, Silas Croft, sign the ledger. Silas was not a tall man, but his presence filled his pine-walled study like a looming thunderhead. He owned the Croft Bar Sea Ranch, a sprawling empire of cattle and water rights he had carved from the Arizona desert with ruthless efficiency. For 5 years, Lara had been his wife, and for 5 years, she had failed in the only duty he truly valued. "It is done," Silas said, not looking at her. He sprinkled sand over the ink, then snapped the ledger shut. The sound was as final as a coffin nail. "Silas, please," Lara whispered, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. "The doctor in Tucson, he said it can take time. He said, the doctor is a fool," Silas cut in, his voice flat. He finally turned to her. His eyes, the color of a winter sky, held no warmth. 5 years is time enough. I have given you my name, my protection, and a home finer than any in this territory. In return, I asked for an heir, a son to carry the Croft name. The new-bought mare in the stable foaled within a year. You have not." The comparison, so casual and cruel, stole her breath. "I am not livestock." "You are not," he agreed, walking to the window. He looked out over his valley. "Livestock that proves barren is simply put down. You are still useful." A cold dread, sharper than a winter wind, snaked down her spine. "Useful? How?" "The Chiricahua have been troublesome. That warrior, Nalan, and his band have been running my cattle. It's bad for business." He gestured out the window. "They are waiting." Lara moved to the window. Her heart stopped. Not soldiers. Apache. A small group of 6 or 7 warriors sat on their ponies just beyond the cottonwoods, still as the landscape itself. They were not in chains. They were here for a parley. "What have you done?" she asked, though she already knew. "I have made peace," Silas said. "A gesture of goodwill. They require supplies. Flour, sugar, rifles." He paused, and a flicker of something vile, satisfaction, crossed his features. "And they admire my possessions. They asked for my wife." "No." The word was a dry choke. "They did not ask precisely," Silas corrected. "But their leader, Nalan, saw you in town last month. He made an offer. I refused. Today, I made a counteroffer. They get the supplies, and they get you. In return, the Croft Bar sea lands are left untouched. You are trading me? I am solving a problem, Lara. I am ridding myself of a barren wife and securing my borders in one clean transaction. You see? Useful." He grabbed her arm. His fingers were like a steel trap. "Do not shame me, Lara. You will go with them. Marcus and 2 of the hands will escort you to the edge of our land. What happens after is between you and them." She was dragged from the house she had tried to make a home. The servants, many of whom had shown her small kindnesses, would not meet her eyes. She was no longer Mrs. Croft. She was a debt. Marcus Flint, Silas's brutal foreman, tied her hands loosely to the pommel of a tired mare. "Sorry, ma'am," he grunted, not sounding sorry at all. They rode for an hour to the dry arroyo that marked the edge of the ranch. The Apache warriors were there, led by the man Silas had called Nalin. He was nothing like the grunting savages from the dime novels. He was tall for an Apache, with a face that seemed carved from the same red rock as the canyons. His black hair was held back by a simple cloth band. He wore buckskin leggings and a calico shirt, and his eyes were the most arresting feature. They were dark, intelligent, and held an abyss of stillness. He watched her approach with an unnerving, unreadable calm. Silas's men cut her hands free and shoved her horse's reins toward the warrior. "The deal is struck," Marcus Flint said, his hand resting on his pistol. Nalin's gaze swept over Alara, cataloging her fear, her fine but dust-covered dress, her trembling hands. He looked at her not as a woman, but as one might inspect a rifle or a horse, checking for flaws. His gaze lingered for a moment on her flat stomach, and Alara felt a hot, visceral shame. He knew. He knew why she was being given away. Nalin nodded once, a sharp, curt movement. He took her reins. He said nothing to her. He spoke a few words in his own tongue, and his men turned their ponies, swallowing her into their group. Alara looked back once. Marcus Flint and the other ranch hands were already riding away, silhouettes against the bright, merciless sun. She was alone. They rode for hours, climbing out of the valley into the high, jagged teeth of the Dragoon Mountains. The pace was relentless. Her soft riding boots were not made for this, her body not hardened to it. But she did not complain. She did not weep. She held on to the pommel, her spine rigid, and focused on the straight, muscular back of the man leading her horse. Nalin. He had not spoken a single word to her. He had not offered her water. He had not struck her. He had, in fact, ignored her completely. As the sun began to bleed crimson and purple across the horizon, they entered a narrow, hidden canyon. It opened into a small, sheltered bowl, where smoke rose from several wickiups, domed dwellings of brush and hide. This was the rancheria. Women and children stopped their work to stare. Their faces were not kind. They were a mix of curiosity and open hostility. Dogs barked. Alara felt like a rabbit tossed into a den of wolves. Nalin dismounted in one fluid motion and finally turned to her. He gestured for her to get down. Her legs were numb and weak. She stumbled, nearly falling from the saddle. He did not move to help. He simply watched her struggle, his face impassive. She finally slid to the ground, her legs buckling. She braced herself against the horse, refusing to fall completely. A woman, sharp-featured and wearing a beautiful, intricate beaded yoke, strode up to Nalin. She spoke to him in their rapid, guttural language, her eyes spitting venom at Alara. Alara didn't need a translation to understand whore, white-eye, unwanted. Nalin listened, his expression unchanging. When the woman, Alara would learn her name was Kachina, finished, he replied in a low, definitive tone. Kachina's face tightened in fury, and she spat on the ground near Alara's feet before storming off. Nalin turned back to Alara. The entire camp was watching. He pointed to a small, isolated wickiup at the very edge of the camp near the horse herd. "Yours," he said. His voice was a low rasp, gravel and sand. It was the first word he had spoken to her. He then pointed to a stack of hides nearby. "Work," he said. He pointed to a stream at the edge of the clearing. "Water." He was not welcoming her. He was not threatening her. He was giving her the terms of her existence. You will work. You will fetch your own water. You will survive, or you will not. It is your affair. He turned and walked away toward a larger wickiup in the center of the camp, leaving her standing alone, an outcast among outcasts, as the cold mountain night descended. She had been sent away for being barren, and landed in a place even more barren of hope. The first week was a study in humiliation and endurance. The high mountain air was thin and cold, a stark contrast to the protected valley of the Bar Sea. Ilara woke before dawn, every muscle screaming from a night spent on a hard-packed dirt floor with only a single thin blanket Nalin had tossed into her wickiup that first night. Her life was reduced to simple, brutal tasks. The other women, led by the venomous Kachina, offered no guidance. They communicated through sharp gestures and dismissive shoves. She was given the worst work. She was sent to haul water from the cold stream. Her hands, accustomed to needlework and holding porcelain, cracking and bleeding from the coarse rope handle of the water basket. She was put to work scraping hides, a foul, nauseating job. The animal sinew and fat caked under her nails and stiffened her dress. Kachina would often inspect her work, find some invisible flaw, and with a sneer, toss the hide back into the dirt, forcing Ilara to start over. Ilara learned through observation. She watched the other women, how they held the metate to grind the mescal hearts into flour, how they mended moccasins with quick, sure stitches, how they moved with an economic grace, wasting no energy. She was clumsy, slow, and weak. She was a constant source of amusement and scorn. The children, sensing her status, would throw pebbles at her, calling out, "Indakid," white woman, in voices shrill with mockery. Ilara learned to ignore them, her face a mask. She had hidden her grief from Silas for 5 years. She could hide her pain from these strangers. But the silence from Nalin was the heaviest burden. He was a ghost in her world. He would leave before dawn with the other hunters and return after dusk. She saw him only in shadows, a tall figure moving toward the central fire, where he spoke quietly with the other warriors and the old chief, a man named Taza. He never entered her wickiup. He never spoke to her. He never looked at her. She was his property. She knew this. But he did not use her. He did not beat her. He did not acknowledge her. It was a terrifying, hollow limbo. Was he disgusted by her? Was he waiting for her to fail, to simply lie down and die so he would be rid of the burden? One evening, exhausted and aching, she returned to her hut after a day of gathering firewood. A small, woven basket sat by the entrance. Inside was a piece of dried venison and a cake of mescal flour. It was not much, but it was more than the scraps she had been scrounging. She looked around. The camp was settling for the night. She saw him, Nalin, standing by the horse corral, watching the moon rise over the canyon rim. He was not looking at her, but he knew she was there. He was feeding her. It was the practical gesture of a man maintaining his possession, a horse, a rifle, a wife. All must be kept in working order. The thought was as cold as the food. A few nights later, the cold deepened. A sudden storm swept through the mountains, bringing a biting sleet. Ilara shivered in her hut, her single blanket and tattered dress offering no defense. Her teeth chattered so hard her jaw ached. She was going to freeze. Perhaps this was how it ended. The flap of her wickiup was pushed aside. Nalin filled the entrance. He said nothing. He carried a heavy buffalo robe, thick and smelling of smoke and man. He threw it on the ground at her feet. Ilara stared at it, then up at him. His face was in shadow, unreadable. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse. He grunted, a sound deep in his chest, and turned to leave. "Why?" she asked, the word bursting out of her before she could stop it. He paused, his back to her. "Why? Why me?" she clarified, her voice trembling. "Why did you ask for me? You saw me. You knew what I was." He turned slowly. The faint light from the camp's dying embers caught the high planes of his face. He looked at her for a long time, his gaze so intense it felt like a physical touch. "You had a fire in your eyes," he said, his English halting but clear. "At the trading post. Your man, Silas, he spoke to you like a dog. You looked at him like a wolf." She was stunned into silence. He had seen that flash of hatred she thought she had hidden so well. "A wolf is not a dog," he continued. "It does not like a cage." He turned and was gone, disappearing into the sleet. Ilara pulled the heavy buffalo robe around her. It was still warm from his body. For the first time since she had been torn from her home, she did not feel the crushing cold. He had not taken her out of desire, or for status. He had taken her because he recognized something in her, a shared wildness, a mutual captivity. This new knowledge changed nothing, and yet it changed everything. The next day, Kachina cornered her by the stream. The other woman was furious. She had clearly seen Nalan leave Ilara's dwelling. "He will not have you," Kachina hissed, close to Ilara's face. She spoke in broken, angry English, likely learned from soldiers or traders. "You are Inda. You are nothing. You are dry earth. No seed will grow." The insult, so specific, so true, hit Ilara harder than a physical blow. Kachina knew. Of course she knew. Nalan must have told her. Or perhaps Silas had broadcasted his wife's shame to the world. "He wastes a robe on you," Kachina sneered, shoving Ilara hard. Ilara stumbled, dropping the water basket. It spilled into the dirt, undoing an hour's work. Something in Ilara, hardened by the cold, the hunger, and the constant humiliation, finally snapped. She had been passive for 5 years. She had been passive when her husband traded her. She would not be passive while her replacement spat on her. Ilara did not shove back. She did not cry. She stood up to her full height, looked Kachina dead in the eye, and said in a low, clear voice, "Then he is strong enough to have a robe to waste." She picked up the empty basket, turned her back on the stunned Apache woman, and walked back to the stream to begin again. From the far side of the camp, half hidden in the shadow of a pinyon pine, Nalan watched. He saw the shove, the spilled water, and Ilara's quiet, unshakable refusal to be broken. A small, almost imperceptible flicker of something disturbed the calm of his features. It might have been respect. The fragile truce of observation and silence was broken. Ilara's small act of defiance at the stream had shifted the air around her. Kachina's hatred now had a sharp edge of fear. The other women's scorn was tinged with a reluctant curiosity. But it was Nalan who changed most. He began to speak to her. They were not conversations. They were commands, observations, and corrections. "Not that root," he said one afternoon, stopping her as she foraged. He kicked at a different, scrubbier-looking plant. "This one, for fever." Another time, as she struggled to mend a moccasin, he took it from her hands. His large, calloused fingers, so lethal with a rifle, were surprisingly deft. He didn't do the work for her. He did one stitch, slowly, forcing her to watch how he angled the bone awl, how he pulled the sinew taut. So, he said. Then he handed it back. She was a student, and he a harsh, impatient master. But he was teaching her. He was teaching her to survive. Her body hardened. The Arizona sun darkened her skin, and the hard labor built muscles she never knew she possessed. She learned the rhythms of the rancheria. She learned which of the older women, like Taza's grandmother, would trade a genuine gap-toothed smile for extra water. She learned the sound of Nolan's pony returning to camp, a sound that now, frighteningly, made her heart quicken. She was still an outcast, but she was no longer a victim. She was Alara. She was, in this place, simply herself. One evening, she sat outside her wickiup, grinding corn on a metate she had been given. It was grueling, repetitive work, but there was a peace to it. The camp was quiet. The men cleaning weapons, the women cooking. Nolan approached and sat on a log across from her. It was the first time he had sought her out in the open, in the light. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the scrape of stone on stone. "Your man," Nolan said finally, testing the English word. "Silas, he takes another wife." Alara's hand stilled. The metate slipped, crushing her finger. She hissed in pain, pulling it back. Blood welled from under the nail. How do you know?" "Our scouts see. A wagon from the east. A new woman. Young. Yellow hair." Alara stared at her bleeding finger. She had expected this. She had known Silas would not wait. Yet the news was a fresh, physical wound. She was replaced, utterly and completely erased. All her fears of inadequacy, all the shame Silas had beaten into her, rushed back in a choking tide. Nolan watched her, his face impassive. "He will have his son now," Alara said, her voice thick. She wrapped a piece of cloth around her throbbing finger, but it was her pride that was bleeding. "Perhaps," Nolan said. The tears she had held back for months finally came. It was not a storm of weeping, but a quiet, hot overflow. She was ashamed of them, ashamed of this weakness. "He sent me here," she whispered, the confession tearing out of her, "because I am worthless, because I am barren." She said the word that was her sentence, barren. She looked at him, daring him to confirm it, to show the disgust she had seen in Silas's eyes every day for 2 years. "I cannot have children. I cannot make sons." Nolan did not look away. He did not sneer. He held her gaze, his dark eyes searching her face. The silence stretched, and Alara felt she was being weighed and measured. He looked away first, turning his gaze to the sharp purple line of the canyon wall, dark against the sunset. He was quiet for so long, she thought he would not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, and the gravel in it seemed to come from a place of deep, old pain. "I never wanted sons." Alara looked up, stunned. The words made no sense. In her world, in his world, sons were everything. They were heirs. They were warriors. They were legacy. "What? I never," he repeated, "wanted a son. But a warrior needs your name." "My name," he said, a bitter note entering his voice, "is Nolan. It means ours, because I belong to my people. My first name, the name my mother gave me, died with my son." Ilara's breath hitched. This was an opening, a wound he was showing her. "I had a wife," Nolan said, his eyes still fixed on the mountains. "Her name was Ishtar. I had a son. He was 3 summers. He was strong. He would have been a great hunter." He paused, and his throat worked. The Ian came, the coughing sickness, from the white soldier's blankets. He turned to look at her, and for the first time, Ilara saw past the warrior. She saw a man hollowed out by grief. "My wife, she died in 3 days. My son. He burned with fever. He died in my arms. I held him as his breath stopped. Nalin stood up, unable to be still. He walked to the edge of the clearing, his back to her. The white man thinks a son is a treasure, a thing to own, an heir. He spat the word. To the Apache, a son is a heart, walking outside your body. He is a target for Inda bullets. He is a small body for the sickness to find. He is a promise that will be broken. I watched my son die. I will not make another. He turned back to her. You're Silas. He is a fool. He throws away a strong woman because she cannot give him a thing he does not deserve. He thinks a son will make him live forever. He is wrong. A son is just a way to die 1,000 times. He looked at her tear-streaked face and her bleeding hand. You are not barren, he said, his voice rough. You are empty, like me. It is not the same. He walked away, leaving her with the stone in her lap and his devastating confession hanging in the air. He had not pitied her. He had not scorned her. He had, in his own broken way, told her that the very thing that made her worthless to the white world made her safe to him. Her curse was a strange, shared armor. She could not give him a son. He did not want one. She looked down at her bleeding hand. Nalin had taken her deepest shame and reframed it. It was not a lack. It was a defense. Later that night, he returned. He did not speak. He wordlessly took her injured hand. His touch was rough, but his movements were gentle. He unwrapped the bloody rag and applied a thick, green salve from a small pouch. It stung, then cooled. He held her hand for a moment longer than was necessary, his thumb brushing over her palm. It was the first kind, intentional touch she had felt in years. Your work, he said, gesturing to the half-ground corn. It is slow. Your hands are soft. I know, she whispered. You will learn. He released her hand and left. Ilara sat in the darkness, the tingling of the medicine on her finger and the brand of his touch on her skin. She had been sent to this camp as a punishment, but for the first time in her life, she did not feel like a prisoner. The agave plant, the mezcal, lived for years as a hard, spiny, unremarkable thing. It endured the drought and the heat, giving nothing. Then, once in its life, it would send up a magnificent stalk, bloom against all odds, and die. Ilara felt like the agave. Nalin's confession had been the rain she did not know she was waiting for. The knowledge that he too was wounded, and that her own barrenness was, to him, a shield rather than a flaw, unlocked something in her. She stopped seeing the rancheria as a prison and began to see it as a refuge. Her education truly began. Taza's grandmother, a tiny wrinkled woman named Sonse, took Ilara under her wing. Sonse spoke almost no English, but she was a patient teacher. She communicated in gestures, taps, and exasperated clucks. She taught Ilara what Nalin's impatient instruction could not. She taught her the why. This plant, Sonse would demonstrate, you boil the root for snakebite. This one, you chew the leaf for a weak heart. This one, you burn to keep the spirits of the night away. She taught Ilara how to stitch a watertight basket from willow shoots, her old hands guiding Ilara's clumsy ones. Ilara learned to cook on hot stones, to make jerky that would last a winter, to identify the tracks of a deer versus a mountain lion. She learned the Apache words for water, tu, food, idea, and home, gawom. She also learned to ride. Nalin took her. Not on the placid mare Silas had given her, but on a wiry, half-wild Apache pony. You ride like a white woman, he stated bluntly one morning. Stiff, all in the saddle. you will fall. I have been riding since I was 10, Ilara retorted, offended. You have been sitting on a horse, he corrected. He mounted his own pony bareback. Ride with the horse, feel his muscle, be his legs. He took her high into the mountains, forcing her to gallop up steep inclines and navigate treacherous, rocky descents. She fell. She was bruised, scraped, and humiliated. But each time she fell, he would wait, impassive, until she remounted. Again, was all he would say. And she did. She learned to move with the horse, to grip with her knees, to balance with her core. She shed her fear. One afternoon, they raced across a high plateau, the wind tearing at her hair, which she now wore in a simple, practical braid. And for the first time, a sound escaped her she did not recognize. It was a laugh. Nalin reined in his horse, looking at her. The sound startled him. It startled her. A slow, hesitant smile touched his own lips. A sight so rare, it was like seeing a cactus bloom. You ride like Apache now, he said. It was the highest praise he could give. Their relationship was the talk of the rancheria. Kachina's hatred became a low, simmering thing, isolating her more than Ilara. The other women now offered Ilara small, hesitant kindnesses, a piece of sweet, roasted mezcal, a nod of approval at her well-scraped hide. She had earned her place, not as Nalin's woman, but as one of them. The intimacy between Ilara and Nalin was not one of tender words or public affection. It was a shared silence. It was the way he now left his horse for her to tend, a sign of ultimate trust. It was the way she saved him the best piece of roasted rabbit. One night, she awoke from a nightmare. Silas, his face purple with rage, dragging her back to the bar sea. She woke with a gasp, sitting bolt upright. The flap of her wickiup opened. Nalin stood there. He had not been inside her dwelling since the night he brought the robe. You dreamed, he said. It was a statement, not a question. Yes. She was trembling. He came inside and sat, not close, but near. He lit a small piece of dried sage, and the sacred, cleansing smoke filled the small hut. He said nothing, simply sharing the space, his presence a solid, warm barrier against the ghosts of her past. He cannot find you here, Nalin said after a long time. This is our stronghold. You are safe. Am I? She asked, her voice small. Am I yours, Nalin? Am I your property, like I was his? The question hung in the smoky air. He looked at her, and the distance between them seemed to vanish. Silas, he owned you, Nalin said, his voice rough. That is the Inda way. To own land, to own water, to own a wife. He shook his head. Apache, we do not own. The land owns us. The people. We belong to each other. He reached out, his calloused fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch was hesitant, as if he were touching a flame. You do not belong to me, Ilara, he whispered, using her name for the first time. You are here, and I am here. That is all. He leaned in. She did not pull away. His lips were chapped and firm. It was not a kiss of passion, but of recognition. It was a sealing of a pact, a merging of two solitudes. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with an emotion she could not name, but it was not grief. It was something new, something raw and terrifyingly alive. My wife, Ishta, she is gone, he said, as if to himself. My son is gone. My heart was stone. He looked at her. You, he said, touching her cheek. You are the bloom of the agave, the life I did not expect. He did not stay the night. He left her with that kiss, that astonishing confession, and the scent of sage. But Ilara knew, as she lay back down, that she was no longer the barren woman from the San Pedro Valley. She was the woman of Nalin, the warrior of the dragoons. And she was, finally, home. The bloom had come. But as with the agave, the bloom was often a harbinger of a final, violent confrontation. Back in the San Pedro Valley, the Croft Bar Sea Ranch was not thriving. Silas Croft's new wife, Agnes, was a pale, timid creature from Philadelphia, barely 19. She was terrified of the landscape, of the servants, and most of all, of her new husband. Silas, who had expected a soft, pliant vessel for his heir, found he was instead saddled with a weeping, delicate girl who fainted at the sight of a branding iron and locked her door against him at night. After 6 months, Agnes was still not with child. The peace Silas had bought with Alara was fragile. His cattle were still disappearing, though not from Nalin's band. Other, more desperate Apache, displaced by the soldiers, were responsible. Silas, however, saw only one enemy. His mood, always foul, had become toxic. He drank heavily, his rages echoing through the grand ranch house. He had traded away a strong, capable wife, albeit a barren one, for a useless, frightened child. And his nemesis, Nalin, had gotten the better end of the bargain. Silas could not abide being made a fool of. His rage found an outlet when a man named Jedediah Stone rode into his yard. Stone was a trader, a whiskey runner, and a scavenger. He moved between the white settlements and the hidden rancherias, respected by neither and useful to both. He was a weasel of a man, with watery eyes and a tobacco-stained beard. "Mr. Croft," Stone said, accepting a glass of Silas's whiskey, "I come from the high country, been trading with Taza's people, the Chiricahua." Silas's eyes narrowed. "Nalin's band." "The very same," Stone grinned, showing rotten teeth. "And I saw something that belongs to you." "I have nothing up there," Silas growled. "Oh, but you do." "You did. A white woman, dark hair, proud-like. Calls herself Alara." The glass in Silas's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. "She's alive." It wasn't a question. "Alive?" Stone chuckled. "She's thriving, Mr. Croft. Dresses like a squaw, but she looks, well, healthy, strong. She's Nalin's woman, clear as day. The other warriors respect her. She's like a damn queen up there." Silas's face went a dark, mottled red. The image Stone painted, his wife, his property, thriving as a squaw queen, was a personal burning insult. She was supposed to be broken. She was supposed to be dead. Instead, she was respected. And Nalin, the man who had stolen his cattle, had her. "And that ain't the half of it," Stone said, leaning in, sensing a profit. "What?" "I reckon Nalin would pay a steep price to keep her. And I reckon you'd pay a steep price to get her back. Or perhaps just to have her removed. An affront to your honor. A white woman living in sin with a savage." Silas stared into his whiskey. His pride was a raw, festering wound. Stone was right. He couldn't let this stand. He couldn't be the man whose wife preferred the Apache. "She is my wife," Silas said, his voice deadly quiet. "Taken from me. Abducted." Stone raised an eyebrow. "Is that how we're telling it? Abducted. I like it. Makes it righteous." "I want her back, Stone," Silas said, slamming the glass down. "I want my property returned." "That'll be complicated," Stone mused. "Nalin's no fool, and he's protective of her. The whole camp is a fortress. I'm not asking you to raid it. I'm asking you to be the snake you are. Get her out. Tell her I'll forgive her. Tell her I miss her. Lie. Bribe. I don't care. Get her to the mouth of the canyon. My men, led by Marcus Flint, will be waiting. And if she won't come, Silas smiled, a terrible, thin-lipped expression. Then you create a distraction. My men will handle the rest. We'll take her. That's a war, Mr. Croft. It's a rescue, Silas corrected. And I'll pay you $500 in gold. Stone's watery eyes lit up. For $500, I'd bring you Geronimo's own headband. Consider it done. Up in the Dragoons, the rancheria was preparing for winter. The harvest of piñon nuts and mezcal crowns had been good. Alara worked alongside the other women, her hands no longer soft, her mind at peace. Her bond with Nalin was deep and profound, a quiet river that ran beneath the surface of their lives. He had moved his belongings into her wickiup. It was a public declaration. Kachina had taken another warrior and moved her dwelling. Her animosity finally banked. Alara was mending one of Nalin's shirts when Taza's scouts returned, their faces grim. They brought news. Jedediah Stone, the whiskey trader, was riding up the canyon, leading a mule laden with goods. Nalin's face darkened. Stone's voice is forked. He brings rot. You will see him? Alara asked. I will see what he wants, but he is not welcome here. Stone rode into the camp with a wide, false smile, unloading blankets, bags of flour, and, hidden beneath them, several jugs of whiskey. Just sharing the wealth, Nalin, Stone said, his eyes scanning the camp. They found Alara. He gave a subtle, conspiratorial wink, which she ignored. We do not want your poison, Nalin said, kicking one of the whiskey jugs. Ah, now, that's for me and my friends. Just trade. I need hides, Nalin. Good, prime hides. And I heard, you got something else I might be interested in. His gaze slid to Alara again. Nalin stepped in front of her, a silent, menacing shield. You have no business here, Stone. Take your goods and leave. Not so fast, Stone said, his smile fading. I got a message from your other husband, Mr. Silas Croft. Alara's blood ran cold. He wants you back, Alara, Stone said, pitching his voice to be sincere. He's sick with grief. He says he made a terrible mistake. His new wife is a shrew. He wants to forgive you. Forgive me? Alara's voice was ice. Yeah, all is forgiven. He's waiting for you. I can take you right now. Back to your house, your soft bed, your silk dresses. Nalin watched Alara. He did not speak. This was her choice. Her past had come for her. Alara stepped out from behind Nalin. She walked directly up to Jedediah Stone, her gaze unwavering. You go back to that man, she said, her voice clear and carrying across the silent camp. You tell him Alara Croft is dead. She died in the desert. The woman standing here is not his. She belongs to these mountains and to this people. Stone's face twisted in anger. The easy way was gone. Big mistake, little lady. You're his. By God and by law. He's going to come for you. Let him come, Nalin said, his hand moving to the knife at his belt. He will find only his death here. That's a threat, is it? Stone sneered, backing up. It is a promise, Nalin said. Leave, now, and do not come back. If you are seen in this canyon again, my scouts will not give a warning. Stone, furious, began to repack his mule. You'll regret this, both of you. You'll regret. He was cut short as Nalin drew his knife and slashed the ropes on the mule's pack. The jugs of whiskey, the flour, and the blankets tumbled into the dust. Leave the rot, Nalin commanded. Jedediah Stone, seeing the murderous look in the warrior's eyes, scrambled onto his horse. He gave Alara one last venomous look. He's coming for you, witch. He's coming. He galloped out of the canyon, leaving his goods scattered in the dirt. A heavy silence fell over the camp. Ilara was trembling, not with fear, but with rage. Her past, her jailer, was reaching for her again. Nalin put his hand on her shoulder. His touch was firm, grounding her. "He will come," Nalin said, staring down the canyon. "I know," Ilara said. "You will not be here. I will send you, far north, to the White Mountain people. You will be safe." Ilara turned to face him. "No." "Ilara, this is not a fight you can—" "I am done running," she said, her voice shaking with a power she didn't know she had. "I was his prisoner for 5 years. I will not be a refugee for the rest of my life. This is my gawa. This is my home. If he comes, I will fight with you." Nalin searched her face, seeing the wolf he had first glimpsed at the trading post. It was no longer caged. It was free. "He comes for you," Nalin said, "but he will find us." He turned to his warriors. "Ride. Watch the passes. Send word when they come. We will be ready." The rancheria transformed. The peaceful camp became a fortress. Ilara, the Barren wife, had just become the center of a war. The camp waited. The tension was a palpable, metallic taste in the air. Scouts watched the only entrance to the canyon. The women and children prepared caches of food and water in the high caves, a refuge they had used for generations. Ilara refused to be idle. She worked alongside Sonsi, the old woman, grinding corn, but also packing supplies. "You are a good Apache wife," Sonsi told her, patting her hand. "You bring trouble, but you do not run from it. This is good." But the waiting was taking a different toll on Ilara. For the past week, she had been waking with a strange sickness. The smell of the cooking fires made her stomach churn. She was exhausted, a bone-deep weariness that had nothing to do with the hard work. She blamed the fear. She blamed the stress of Stone's visit. One morning, she was helping to move a heavy basket of supplies when a wave of dizziness so profound swept over her that she dropped her end. The basket tumbled, and Ilara collapsed to her knees, clutching her head. Sonsi and Kachina rushed to her side. Kachina, whose animosity had cooled to a wary respect, helped the old woman get Ilara to her wickiup and lay her down. "She is pale," Kachina observed. "She is afraid," another woman said. Sonsi, however, was quiet. The old Dia, medicine woman, placed a dry, papery hand on Ilara's belly. Her eyes, cloudy with age, sharpened. She pressed gently. Ilara flinched. "When was your last moon?" Sonsi asked in her broken English. Ilara froze. Her moon. With the stress, the new life, the hard work, she hadn't even thought about it. She counted back. Silas had sent her away. It had been 2 moons, Ilara whispered, her mind reeling. Maybe 3. I thought, with the changes, I thought it had just stopped. Sonsi's face broke into a wide, gap-toothed grin. She looked at Kachina and spoke rapidly in Apache. Kachina's eyes went wide, and she looked at Ilara with a completely new expression. "Aw." "What?" Ilara demanded, sitting up. "What is it? Am I sick?" "Sickness?" Sonsi cackled, a dry, reedy sound. "No, chi, not sickness. You are not dry earth. You are not barren at all." The old woman patted Ilara's flat stomach. "A new warrior," she said, "or a new hunter, a child. You carry Nalin's child." Ilara's world tilted. It was impossible. She was barren. Silas had declared it. The doctors had hinted at it. For 5 years, it had been her truth, her identity. Unless a sudden, horrifying, and then liberating thought struck her. It was never me. For 5 years, she had carried the shame. For 5 years, she had borne the scorn. And all that time, It had been Silas, Silas Croft, the great man, the owner of the valley. He was the one who was barren. He was the one who was dry earth. The irony was so profound, so bitter, it was almost laughable. She was pregnant. She was carrying the child of the Apache warrior who had never wanted sons. The news ripped through the rancheria like a wildfire. It was a sign, a miracle. The white woman, cast out for being barren, was fertile with their blood. It galvanized the warriors. This was not just a fight for a stolen woman. It was a fight for their future, for the first child born in the camp in over a year. Nalin was on the canyon rim, checking the defenses when Kachina ran to him. He heard the news, and his reaction was not joy. He walked back to the wiki up slowly, his face a mask of stone. Ilara was waiting for him. The other women had discreetly vanished. She saw him in the doorway, and her heart ached. His face? It was the same look of hollowed-out grief she had seen when he spoke of his first son. Nalin? He walked in and sat heavily. He said nothing. "It is true," she whispered. "Sunsi is sure." "I know." His voice was choked. "You told me you never wanted sons," she said, her own tears welling. I did not know. I did not mean." "Do not," he said, holding up a hand. He looked at her, and his eyes were raw. "When my son died, the pain, it hollowed me. I swore to Usen, to God, I would never feel that again. I would never plant a seed in a world so full of death." He reached out, and with a trembling hand, touched her stomach. "And now, you, who were barren, you have brought life back to a dead place." He looked at her, his mask cracking. "I am afraid, Ilara. I have not been afraid in 10 winters, not of soldiers, not of death. But for this," he tapped her stomach, "I am terrified." "So am I," she admitted. "But I am also—" She couldn't find the word. "Alive," he finished for her. "I know." He pulled her to him, burying his face in her hair. It was not a victor's embrace. It was the desperate clinch of two people who had just been given everything and therefore had everything to lose. Their quiet, shared moment of terror and hope was shattered by a single, high-pitched cry from the canyon's lookout. "Inda! Inda Cade!" White men. They are coming. Nalin was on his feet in an instant. The warrior replaced the man. His fear was gone, replaced by a cold, deadly focus. "They are here," he said. He grabbed his rifle. Go to the caves with Sunsi and the others. Now." "Nalin, go," he roared, and the command in his voice was absolute. "You are not Ilara, the woman now. You are the mother of my son. You will protect him. I will protect you. Go." He kissed her, a hard, desperate kiss. "I will find you." He was gone. Ilara watched him run, joining the other warriors as they melted into the rocks, their faces painted for battle. Sansi grabbed her arm. "Come, Chi, the high places. We must hide." Ilara let herself be pulled along, her hand pressed against her stomach. Jedediah Stone had done his job. He had reported her refusal. And Silas Croft, enraged at the insult, and now, though he didn't know it, at the ultimate betrayal, had come to reclaim his property. The ghost of the San Pedro had arrived to drag her back to hell. Silas Croft rode into the canyon with the blind rage of an owner, his 12 men fanned out behind him. "Find me that squaw," he roared, his voice echoing off the stone. From the high caves, Ilara watched, her hand pressed to her stomach. The camp was silent. Nalin was a shadow on the opposite ledge, his rifle ready. The trap was sprung. Nalin's first shot took Marcus Flint from his saddle. The canyon erupted. War cries and gunfire poured down from every ledge. The ranchers, trapped in the narrow gorge, were easy targets. Horses screamed. Men fell, firing wildly at enemies they couldn't see. In less than a minute, it was a massacre. Silas's horse was shot from under him. He landed hard, his rifle skittering away. He scrambled behind a boulder, pistol in hand, as his last men threw down their guns in surrender. He was alone, trapped. He looked up, his eyes wild with fury, and saw her. Ilara, at the mouth of the cave. "Ilara!" he shrieked, his voice cracking. "You barren witch! You did this!" He raised his pistol, not to rescue her, but to end her. Before he could fire, a shot from Nolan's rifle struck his hand, sending the pistol flying. Silas howled, clutching his bloody fingers. Nolan began his descent. He did not climb. He flowed down the rock face. He landed on the canyon floor and threw his rifle into the dust, drawing only his knife. He walked slowly toward the man who had cast him his greatest gift. "You came for your property, Inda," Nolan called, his voice cold. "Come and claim it." Consumed by a final desperate rage, Silas charged, pulling a Bowie knife from his own belt. It was a mismatch of fury versus precision. Silas was a bully. Nolan was a killer. The fight was brutal and short. Nolan parried Silas's wild slash, and his own knife found a home deep in Silas's ribs. Silas gasped, stumbling back. He looked at Nolan, then his gaze traveled up to the cave, to Ilara. He saw her, her hand on her belly. He saw the truth. "Barren," he gurgled, blood spilling from his lips. He wasn't talking about her. He collapsed into the red dust of the canyon he'd tried to conquer. The silence that fell was total. Then Ilara ran, stumbling down the path. "Nolan!" He met her, catching her in an embrace that held all the fear and relief of the battle. He was unhurt. He held her face, wiping her tears. "It is finished," he whispered. "The ghost is gone." He looked down, his hand covering hers on her stomach. Awe replaced the warrior's hardness. "You were never barren, Ilara," he said, his voice thick. "You were just planted in dry earth. You needed a land that was worthy of you." That night, the camp feasted. Ilara sat beside Nolan, his hand never leaving hers. "I told you I never wanted sons," he said, his voice low in the firelight. "I was afraid to lose another. But to not have a child with you, that is a greater fear." He kissed her, a promise. "We will protect this life, together." Ilara and Nolan's story was not one of happily ever after. The West was too harsh for such tales. The Apache wars were not over, and their future and the future of their child would be forged in the fire of a changing world. But they faced it together. She was no longer a white woman's shadow, and he was no longer a warrior of a dying past. They were a new beginning. They learned that family isn't about the blood you inherit, but the blood you're willing to spill to protect the ones you choose. If you were moved by Ilara's journey from barren property to a warrior's partner, please show your support. Like this video and share it with someone who loves a story of survival and defiance. And for more tales of the untamed West, where legends are born from loss, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring that bell. Thank you for listening.